Rachel's operation became the foundation for a new generation of artillery doctrine that integrated advanced mathematics with real-time battlefield analysis. Her techniques for using incoming fire as intelligence data and predicting enemy patterns were incorporated into fire direction training programs throughout the military. The methods she developed during the Battle of Al-Rashid Valley were taught at the Army War College and adopted by Allied artillery forces around the world. Her approach to treating battlefield chaos as mathematical data became known as Thompson Doctrine and fundamentally changed how artillery officers approach their profession under combat stress. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the military evaluated officers for high-stress positions. Rachel's success proved that analytical thinking and mathematical precision weren't hindrances under extreme pressure. They were force multipliers that enabled commanders to achieve better outcomes with fewer resources. Today, Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Calculator Thompson leads the Army's Advanced Artillery Mathematics Research Center at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where she develops the computational frameworks that guide the next generation of precision fire support. Her 6-hour battle against 18 enemy artillery positions is remembered not just as a tactical victory, but as a demonstration that mathematics can be the most powerful weapon in modern warfare. And when young artillery officers ask her how she maintained such precision while shells were exploding around her bunker, Rachel always gives them the same advice. Never forget that chaos is just unorganized data waiting to be analyzed. Every explosion tells you something about your enemy, their positions, their capabilities, their patterns. When you can turn chaos into mathematics, fear becomes just another variable to be calculated and controlled. Because sometimes the person everyone thinks will break under pressure is exactly the one who will turn that pressure into precision. And sometimes the most devastating artillery fire comes from the most brilliant mathematical mind operating under the most impossible conditions. They said she'd panic during artillery barrage until she calculated enemy coordinates while shells exploded around her. This story begins at the Army War College in Carlisle, Pennsylvania, where Captain Rachel Calculator Thompson was completing her advanced artillery and fire direction training. At 29 years old, Rachel had an exceptional academic record, degrees in mathematics and physics from MIT, top scores in ballistics and trajectory analysis, and a mind that could process complex calculations faster than most computers. But her superiors weren't convinced she could maintain that analytical precision under the psychological pressure of incoming artillery fire. "Captain Thompson," said Colonel James Thunder Harrison during her final combat stress evaluation, "your technical qualifications are outstanding, but we have serious concerns about your ability to function as a fire direction officer under hostile bombardment. Calculating firing solutions requires absolute mental clarity when enemy shells are landing around your position." Rachel stood in the simulated command bunker at Carlisle, surrounded by the sophisticated computers and communication equipment that would become her tools in combat. "Sir, I understand that incoming fire creates stress, but mathematical principles remain constant regardless of external conditions. Trajectory calculations and coordinate geometry don't change because of explosions." Brigadier General Patricia Iron Rain Martinez, the War College's commandant, leaned forward with concern. "Thompson, you're thinking like an academic, not like a combat officer. When 155mm shells are landing every 30 seconds, when your bunker is shaking apart, when you're receiving casualty reports from multiple units, that's when most officers lose their ability to think clearly. Your mathematical genius means nothing if you can't function under that kind of pressure." Major David Steele Rodriguez, head of the Combat Stress Assessment, added his concerns. "Rachel, we've monitored your stress responses during simulated bombardment exercises. Your heart rate spikes beyond optimal levels, your fine motor control deteriorates, and you show signs of analysis paralysis when faced with time-critical decisions under pressure." But Rachel had studied the psychology of combat stress extensively, and she believed the military was misunderstanding the relationship between analytical thinking and performance under extreme pressure. "Sir, With respect, I think those stress responses indicate enhanced cognitive processing, not breakdown. When my heart rate increases during complex calculations under pressure, it's because my brain is working harder to process more variables simultaneously. 8 months later, Rachel's theories would be tested in the most challenging circumstances imaginable during the Battle of Al-Rashid Valley. Intelligence reports confirmed that enemy forces had established a sophisticated artillery complex in the mountainous terrain of eastern Iraq, 25 heavy cannons, 12 multiple rocket launchers, and the most advanced counter-battery radar system ever encountered in the theater. The enemy artillery posed an immediate threat to coalition forward operating bases and supply convoys. Their positions were expertly camouflaged, constantly mobile, and protected by electronic warfare systems that could jam American communications and confuse targeting computers. Captain Thompson, announced General Martinez during the emergency briefing at Forward Operating Base Liberty, "You're being assigned as Fire Direction Officer for Operation Counterstrike. You'll be coordinating defensive and offensive artillery operations for the entire sector while under constant enemy bombardment." Rachel studied the tactical displays with the intense focus that had characterized her entire military career. The enemy had positioned their artillery in a complex pattern that maximized their ability to deliver devastating fire while minimizing their exposure to counter-battery response. This wasn't just a military challenge. It was a three-dimensional mathematical puzzle that required solving multiple equations simultaneously. Colonel Harrison, who had flown in from Carlisle specifically for this operation, remained skeptical about Rachel's assignment to such a critical position. "Thompson, this isn't a classroom exercise. The enemy has been dropping shells on our positions every 15 minutes for the past week. Their fire is accurate, sustained, and specifically designed to break the concentration of fire direction officers. You'll be trying to calculate complex firing solutions while the ground is literally exploding beneath your feet." But Rachel had spent months since the War College developing mathematical frameworks that could function effectively even under extreme stress. "Sir, I've created computational algorithms that account for stress-induced variables and environmental chaos. The key is developing redundant calculation methods that remain accurate even when external conditions are unpredictable." The operation began at 0600 hours on a clear Tuesday morning in the Iraqi desert. Rachel took her position in the heavily fortified Fire Direction Center, surrounded by the most advanced artillery computers, radar systems, and communication equipment available to the U.S. military. But as the day progressed, Rachel realized that all her theoretical preparation couldn't fully capture the psychological reality of coordinating artillery operations while under sustained enemy bombardment. "Fire Direction Center, this is Battery Alpha," came the urgent voice of Captain Mike Thunder Johnson, commander of an M777 howitzer battery positioned 8 kilometers to the north. "We're receiving massive incoming artillery fire, multiple enemy batteries targeting our position. Request immediate counter-battery fire." Rachel's displays lit up with incoming trajectory data as enemy shells began impacting throughout the sector. Her sophisticated radar systems were tracking dozens of incoming rounds simultaneously, each impact providing crucial data about enemy firing positions, ammunition types, and targeting patterns. "Battery Alpha, this is Fire Direction Center," Rachel responded calmly, her voice steady despite the explosions that were starting to rock her bunker. "I'm tracking the incoming fire, computing back trajectory analysis now. Stand by for firing data." Lieutenant Maria Precision Chen, operating from Battery Bravo's position, reported in over the radio. "Fire Direction Center, we're taking heavy fire from at least 6 different directions. I count 12 separate enemy batteries engaging our position simultaneously." Rachel spent the next hour developing new mathematical frameworks that could account for apparently random enemy behavior. She analyzed their previous patterns, identified the constraints that limited their movement options, and created probability models that could predict their likely actions even when they were deliberately trying to be unpredictable. "Charlie Battery, enemy position Tango 6 has been attempting to avoid our targeting by varying their firing schedule, but their variations are constrained by ammunition supply cycles and crew fatigue patterns. They have a 73% probability of firing within the next 8-minute window. The mathematical analysis proved correct again. By engaging the position during the predicted time window, Charlie Battery successfully eliminated the enemy artillery that had been evading American counter-battery fire for hours. Fire Direction Center, this is Charlie Battery. Target eliminated during predicted firing window. This is incredible. It's like you can see into their minds. But Rachel's greatest challenge came when enemy forces launched their most sophisticated attack yet, a coordinated bombardment by all remaining artillery assets designed to overwhelm coalition defenses through sheer volume and intensity of fire. All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center. I'm detecting massive incoming fire from 18 different positions. This is their final coordinated assault. They're committing everything they have left. The barrage that followed was the most intense artillery bombardment Rachel had ever experienced. Shells were landing around her Fire Direction Center every few seconds. Communications were being jammed intermittently, and several coalition positions reported direct hits and casualties. But instead of the panic that her superiors had predicted, Rachel entered a state of mathematical clarity that would define her career. The chaos around her seemed to slow down as she processed the incoming data with machine-like precision. All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center. I'm implementing simultaneous counter-battery fire against all enemy positions. Each battery will receive individualized firing solutions calculated to achieve maximum effectiveness while minimizing exposure to return fire. What happened next was a masterpiece of mathematical warfare. Rachel coordinated 15 coalition artillery batteries in a synchronized counter-bombardment that struck all 18 enemy positions within a 4-minute window. The firing solutions were so precise that coalition shells arrived at their targets during the enemy's reload cycles, maximizing damage while minimizing the enemy's ability to respond. Fire Direction Center, this is all batteries, came the amazed voice of Captain Johnson. We have confirmed destruction of all targeted enemy positions. The incoming fire has stopped completely. I've never seen counter-battery fire coordinated with that level of precision. The silence that followed was profound. For the first time in days, forward operating base Liberty was not under artillery bombardment. Rachel had accomplished something that military analysts had considered impossible: the complete neutralization of a sophisticated enemy artillery network through mathematical prediction and precision timing rather than overwhelming firepower. All batteries, this is Fire Direction Center, Rachel announced, her voice steady despite the enormity of what she had accomplished. Mission complete. Final tally: 18 enemy artillery positions neutralized, 12 rocket launcher sites destroyed, 0 coalition casualties from counter-battery operations. All units stand down and conduct damage assessment. The celebration in the Fire Direction Center was immediate and overwhelming. Officers who had questioned Rachel's psychological fitness for combat command now watched in amazement as she completed the most successful counter-battery operation in recent military history, while maintaining perfect analytical precision under the most intense bombardment imaginable. General Martinez, who had observed the entire operation from the Tactical Operations Center, called Rachel directly. Captain Thompson, correction, Major Thompson, what you accomplished today will be studied by artillery officers for generations. You didn't just coordinate counter-battery fire, you revolutionized how we approach mathematical warfare under extreme stress. Colonel Harrison, who had initially opposed Rachel's assignment to such a critical position, was the first to congratulate her when the operation ended. Thompson, I owe you an apology. What I interpreted as potential weakness under stress was actually enhanced cognitive capability. Your ability to process complex mathematics while under direct fire is unprecedented. Captain Johnson, who had coordinated with Rachel throughout the bombardment, couldn't contain his amazement. Calculator, I've been doing artillery for 15 years, and I've never seen anything like what you did today. You turned incoming enemy fire into targeting data and used their own bombardment against them. Rachel's operation became the foundation for a new generation of artillery doctrine that integrated advanced mathematics with real-time battlefield analysis. Her techniques for using incoming fire as intelligence data and predicting enemy patterns were incorporated into fire direction training programs throughout the military. The methods she developed during the Battle of Al-Rashid Valley were taught at the Army War College and adopted by Allied artillery forces around the world. Her approach to treating battlefield chaos as mathematical data became known as Thompson Doctrine and fundamentally changed how artillery officers approach their profession under combat stress. But perhaps the most significant change was in how the military evaluated officers for high-stress positions. Rachel's success proved that analytical thinking and mathematical precision weren't hindrances under extreme pressure. They were force multipliers that enabled commanders to achieve better outcomes with fewer resources. Today, Lieutenant Colonel Rachel Calculator Thompson leads the Army's Advanced Artillery Mathematics Research Center at Fort Sill, Oklahoma, where she develops the computational frameworks that guide the next generation of precision fire support. Her 6-hour battle against 18 enemy artillery positions is remembered not just as a tactical victory, but as a demonstration that mathematics can be the most powerful weapon in modern warfare. And when young artillery officers ask her how she maintained such precision while shells were exploding around her bunker, Rachel always gives them the same advice. Never forget that chaos is just unorganized data waiting to be analyzed. Every explosion tells you something about your enemy, their positions, their capabilities, their patterns. When you can turn chaos into mathematics, fear becomes just another variable to be calculated and controlled. Because sometimes the person everyone thinks will break under pressure is exactly the one who will turn that pressure into precision. And sometimes the most devastating artillery fire comes from the most brilliant mathematical mind operating under the most impossible conditions.